Hello everyone, Karnasa here, and welcome back to Kerbal Gets Real, the next Millenia. At the beginning of this episode, we are going to be focusing on the moon just a tiny bit before moving on to some very exciting Mars space station stuff. That's right, I did ask in the last episode if people wanted to see more Mars stuff, and the general consensus was yes. So we are, well, I do have a couple of missions that I want to sort out around the moon first. One of them being the lunar gantry. In the last episode, I was having a few issues with the Kraken, so I decided to widen it and hope that that would work. Unfortunately, as we can see, no, it did not. The lunar South Pole outpost still decided to yeet itself into the air whenever, well, not really the air, into the vacuum of space whenever I tried to connect anything else to it. A bit unfortunate, and that's one reason why I really want to start thinking about Mars. But, well, before we get to Mars, I do have a very tasty contract. That is to land a crew on the Oceanus Procularum. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to be sending Edward Kerman, Kermit Kerman, British Person, and Saint Egg III over to the moon. I swear this is the last little bit of lunar stuff before we move over to Mars stuff. Although we won't be getting to Mars today. I am going to split this episode into two parts. Well, the whole moon's Mars station even into two parts because I want to keep these episodes at about 20 minutes long now. That's kind of like the judging from YouTube analytics and all of that like nonsense stuff. It is the kind of best kind of time that I've seen. So I'm trying to keep them at 20 minutes. And unfortunately, if I wanted to build the entire space station around Mars, it would have taken way longer than 20 minutes. So that is going to be split into the next episode. And this will essentially be part one of the Mars space station all getting put together. Anyway, I digress. We have now arrived at the moon with the crew, and we are just going to fire up those two RL-10, not the Lunex configuration, the CECE base configuration, the deeply throttleable configuration of the RL-10 that I am using for these landers, and hopefully land successfully on the surface of the moon at the Oceanus Procularum. So this is slightly adjusted from the last time that I sent a crew down to the surface of the moon. For those of you that may not have seen it, well, we came crashing down a little bit too hard. Yes, we ran out of fuel about 50 meters above the surface of the moon, which is never a good thing. The lander came down way too hard, didn't break anything, but it unfortunately flipped over the wrong way, and I had to perform a few shenanigans in order to upright that lander and then get it back up into a low lunar orbit. But this time, with the stretched fuel tank, well, we are more than capable of landing on the moon with no issues. We came down at about 2 meters per second, so it was a relatively nice and slow descent and landing. But we are going to get Edward Kerman out and plant the all-important flag. The site name is Oceanus Procularum Site 1. First time we've been here. And we only did it for the money. That's right. The contract was far too tempting to leave alone. I think I got about 2.5 million funds from doing this contract. It might have even been more. It might have been 3. And of course, I am going to need all of the funding that I so require in order to do the rather extravagant Mars space station that I have big plans for. So we've landed. Now what we did, well, we spent 2 days on the moon. That was part of the contract requirement. And obviously that means that we are in, well, a bit of a different inclination to the orbiter. So in order to try and correct that as much as possible, what I did was I did a bit of a dogleg maneuver to get us back up into orbit. I launched, I went north slightly, and then I started burning prograde once I'd gone north just a tiny bit. And then that meant that my relative inclination to the orbiter was only about 4 degrees by the time I got into orbit, which is really not an awful lot, and that was easily fixed with a few burns in low lunar orbit. But as you can see, we are able to get those 4 Kerbals safely back to Earth and recovered. But now we are going to be moving on to the Mars stuff, and to be honest, the first lot of the Mars stuff is just going to be sending up more hardware that I have already sent up in a previous episode. So I have these atomic tugs, the wonderful tugs that can send almost 200 tons to Mars and then send the tugs back to Earth. They are glorious, they are great, I'm going to be using them a lot in this series, but I've only got 2 in low Earth orbit at the moment, and I want more. I want to have a fleet of 5 for this Mars transfer window, so that's what we are going to be focusing on now. The first one was launched from Kourou. This is being launched from Tanegashima in Japan. It's a little bit dark, so you can't really see much. Unfortunately, we did have to do a nighttime launch for this, which is always a bit of a shame. But the reason why that is I am launching the tugs from Kourou and Tanegashima into the plane of the moon, because I like doing interplanetary transfers from the plane of the moon. It makes it a lot easier to set up a transfer window that way. Unfortunately, The ones that I'm going to be launching from Norfolk in the UK, which is what we are witnessing right now, well, I'm not going to be able to launch those into the plane of the moon. Because the latitude or longitude, I always get those mixed up. I think it's latitude. The latitude of Norfolk is a little bit too high to launch into the plane of the moon. So what I have done to kind of rectify this is I have a transfer window planner in an orbit that I can achieve from Norfolk, and I am launching all of these into the plane, into the basically the same orbit as that transfer window planner. I know that I can get a good transfer to Mars from that orbit, so that is kind of the way that I have gone around doing it for Norfolk rather than, say, launching into the plane of the moon, and hopefully it should work. I'm not sure if it will, but we'll have to see when we send things over to Mars. Anyway, what we're doing now is we are going to be launching up the extra hydrogen tanks for the atomic tugs, because having just the 150-ton tank of hydrogen on the atomic tug is not enough to get over to Mars with around 200 tons of payload. No, we need more. We need all that we can have. And unfortunately, yet again, landing an Olympus booster in the water proved rather deadly. Yes, I really do not like the bugged water colliders in RSS. At least it only seems to happen for these booster landings. So what we're going to do now we are in orbit with this is we are, of course, going to do just a standard rendezvous, get this all docked together, and then hopefully, well, that will be that. We're going to be doing these for an additional 3. Like I said, I want 5 of these up in this episode. And another thing that I am going to be doing is I will be building more of these up before the next Mars transfer window, and I will eventually have like a fleet of maybe 20 of these just all over the solar system at different points in time. I've not decided if 20 is going to be the number that I aim for, but you know, 20, it's a nice round number. It seems like a number that I would quite like. And that is more than enough to probably put some serious stuff all over the solar system, which will be very exciting. There we go. We have rendezvoused with the original atomic tug with this external tank, and it was a bit close. Not the closest that's going to happen in this episode, though, which we will see later on. Yes. Yeah, rendezvous, when you get them down to below, well, 10 meters, it can go a little bit wrong if you're not quick enough. So with that being done, we are going to be launching yet another one of these external fuel tanks. That's right, it's going to be the same launch over and over and over again until I get 5 of these all built up into low Earth orbit. So I am trying to skip through a lot of this as much as I possibly can, because obviously watching the same thing over and over again isn't the best of content, so I'm skipping through and trying to highlight the important sections of the mission, like the boosters falling into the water yet again. Yeah, it's really annoying when that happens. I've lost far too many boosters for that. So we have rendezvoused yet again, and what we are going to be doing is attempting to dock, and for some reason this time, I don't know why, my brain was just deciding to have a bit of a meltdown. I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this manually. I'm not going to get Docking Autopilot to do this for me. I am fed up of just sitting around waiting for Docking Autopilot to work. Let's just do this myself and prove to myself that I can still dock in real solar system without any assistance from MechJeb. And it wasn't all that hard. I mean, I am using Smart ASS rather than just standard SAS, but still, with standard SAS, it couldn't be too much more difficult. But that was that. That is the second one of those extra fuel tanks. Now we're going to be launching the 5th and final one from Norfolk in the UK. I say it's the 5th and final one. It's only the 3rd in this episode, but we did launch 2 of these already in the previous episode. I really like how these look. I really like the ginormous circular solar panels, which obviously they're a new feature now in stock KSP. I don't think they're quite as large as the ones that I'm using, but yeah, I like that. 1.12 is out, and I'm thinking of maybe starting to do some live streams, do a series on that. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. But that Olympus booster there, it just came down, and unfortunately, yes, I was physical time warping a little bit too aggressively, and I didn't realize how low I was to the ground. That my altitude was coming down quite quickly, and unfortunately, I didn't fire up that Raptor engine in the middle in time to get a nice soft touchdown. So with that being done, we have our 5 nuclear tugs all in orbit, all prepared and all ready to go. One of them already has the observational module on top, So what we're going to be doing now for pretty much the rest of this episode is launching all of the different components for the Mars space station, and we are going to be starting off with the core module. I don't know why I sent the observational module before the core module. I think it was built first, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, this is the observational module. No, the core module. God, I can't even get my facts right. This is the core module. Essentially what this is, it's got a lot of docking ports. I think it's got 6 docking ports on this, so it can dock to loads of different modules in the space station, and it also has a little habitation section as well for some of our crew to stay. So what we're going to be doing now is attempting to land incredibly close to the Space Center in Norfolk. I decided to keep most of this booster landing in because this was one of my more prouder booster landings. You can see, we can see quite clearly the Space Center just over there, and we touched down very gently, and that was a much better booster landing. I would like more of those, please. And to be honest, I think I'm getting a little bit better at landing them close to the Space Center. But now we are going to come back to the core module and attempt to rendezvous with the designated nuclear tug that we are going to use for this part of the Mars space station. We are using the advanced OTV engine for all of our orbital maneuvering because it is very efficient, and I feel like that is going to be my orbital maneuvering engine for a very long time. And there we go. That's what I was talking about earlier. Yes, we traded a little bit of paint with the nuclear tug there. Essentially what happened was I forgot to ullage before getting close, and yeah, the engine didn't fire up because of vapor. And yes, we came a little bit too hard, but luckily nothing broke, which is always nice. It would be a terrible, terrible shame if we were to break one of those very expensive nuclear tugs. Yes, I'm not sure how the agency would feel about that. But what we're going to be doing now is launching the docking modules for the space station. Yes, this is going to be the third set that we are going to be sending up. And what I'm doing for this mission, essentially, I'm not going to build the space station in low Earth orbit. I'm going to build the space station at Mars. I don't know what's the easier way of doing it, but I feel the way that I've got all of my infrastructure set up at the moment, well, building it at Mars is going to be the sensible way of going about doing it. And it will just, yeah, and it means that if I can do it like this, it means I can always add future modules to the Mars space station in Mars orbit later on down the line. And that is definitely something that I do want to do. So I'm sending 5 modules over at this kind of transfer window. And they are going to be the core, the observation module, the solar truss, the docking modules, and a section of life support. But there we go. We can see the docking modules now all in display. So that is actually 2 modules there. That wasn't just a single one. I'm going to be sending both of these at the same time because their mass only comes to about 120 tons. So I thought I might as well send both on one nuclear tug. Unfortunately, I was not aggressive enough with my slowing down with this Olympus booster. So we lost the engines before we even made it anywhere near the Space Center. A bit of a bummer, that one, but oh well. I'll have to bear that in mind next time I try and land a booster. But anyway, the docking module, what we are working on sending to orbit right now. So as I did mention, it is 2 parts of the same thing. Each part that we have on this is going to go on a different side of the core module, and each part has 4 NASA docking ports, which are quite big, and they are going to be useful for connecting, yes, connecting, I almost forgot that word then, connecting up our crew transfer vehicles to the space station. We've also got 4 of those extendable crew tubes on the bottom of them, and I don't know how they work yet. I've still not tested those, and I really should have done. But what I have been led to believe by the fluff text, not even the fluff text, the descriptive text on the part in the vehicle assembly building is that they will grab onto, say, another part, so I might be able to just float a craft over and bump them that way. We'll have to see how that goes. I've not tested it. I probably should have done before putting this all into orbit and then sending it on its way to Mars, but that would have been the smart idea. Anyway, unfortunately, my game crashed when I was trying to dock these 2 together, so we're not going to see the docking today because I forgot to hit record on OBS when I reopened the game. Sorry about that. It has been done though. So now what we're going to be turning to is the launch of the European Space Agency's and New Horizons Space Agency's newest launch vehicle, capable of lifting 75 tons to low Earth orbit from Kourou. Now, I designed this in the last episode, and really the only reason why I designed this is because I needed to lift more than 50 tons up into low Earth orbit from my Kourou launch site, because this is going to be the solar module for the space station. So the solar module is about 50 tons, and I just played around with designs until I came up with this one, and it turned out it could actually launch about 75 tons, so it is definitely overbuilt for this payload, but oh well, I wanted something that could definitely get it to where it is going to need to be. So all it has is 2 Vulcane engines in a massive core stage. Can't exactly remember the diameter, I think it's about 6 meters. So 2 Vulcane engines on the base of that core stage, and to provide enough lift when we launch this, we have 2 RSR-MVs strapped onto the side, which kind of explode as they are separated, which is always a little bit of a worry, but nothing terrible went wrong. Anyway, payload fairing has been deployed, and now we can see the solar module for the space station. This is by far the lightest module that I have sent up. I believe this is, as I mentioned before, only about 50 tons. The next lightest module that I have sent over, or that I will be sending over in this transfer window, is going to be the core module, which I think comes in at about 110 tons all in. So the reason why that core module is so heavy is because I am placing shielding on the station just so that I've got that little bit extra of radiation protection for our astronauts when they are over at Mars. I've about half filled the shielding, so it's not going to be a huge amount, but to be honest, any more than that, and the weight of shielding just gets so incredibly heavy that there's really, well, I'm sending 200 tons over to Mars at the moment. I would need to be able to send even more than that. It's crazy how much shielding does actually add to the mass of a spacecraft. And it's always nice, obviously, with the Lunar South Pole Outpost, I can create shielding on site using regolith. I can't really do that for a space station. But fortunately, I mean, the space station is going to be in the dark for like half of its rotation around Mars. So solar storms, not as bad when you're in orbit as they are when you're on the surface. Especially, say, somewhere like the moon. The moon, obviously, its day is 14 days long. If you're in a solar storm whilst it's day on the moon, well, you are going to be stuck in that solar storm for the entire duration of that solar storm. So shielding on a lunar base is vitally important to keep your astronauts alive. Anyway, enough of that. What we are going to be doing now is launching the last module that we are going to be sending over in this transfer window, and this is just going to be the life support. Launched from Tanegashima in Japan, I seem to be launching all of my food supplies from Tanegashima. The JAXA seem to be my dedicated agency to go to launch all of these supplies. But what we are going to be doing now is attempting to return the Olympus booster to the launch site. This was tricky. This was incredibly tricky because the island that Tanegashima is on, well, it's very small. I have a very, very, very narrow margin of land to actually try and land this booster, as we can see as we were coming down over now. But fortunately, we are able to target our landing site incredibly well, and what I want to do now is just burn a bit over to the left there and try and land as close to the Space Center as possible. Not quite as close as I would like to, but you know, eventually I will do it. I will land one of these Olympus boosters on top of the vehicle assembly building. That is one of the goals that I want to do before the end of this series. And I am flying all of these booster landings manually. I'm not doing a KOS script or anything like that. That is also something that I do want to potentially look into doing at some point. But yes, I want to land a booster on the VAB. I don't know how long that's going to take, but it will happen in this series. It's going to happen. I'm getting closer and closer by the episode. It will happen. But anyway, now we're just docking up this food module to the atomic tug. And with that being put into place, that is the final piece of the puzzle for the Mars station in this transfer window. And yeah, now we have to wait 300 days in order for the transfer window to actually open up. Yes, it's a bit of a long wait, but it was the best transfer window that I could go for. There was one that I could have done before, but unfortunately it was a very bad transfer. So what we're going to do at the end of this video, because I did notice that it was a little bit too short after that, and like I said before, I can't really do the rest of the Mars stuff because that would have taken probably another 20-25 minutes to actually get that all done, is the crew on Solaris Station have been on there for 4 years now. Thought probably time to actually do a little bit of a crew rotation. So we're going to be grabbing Errol Teachin, Sam Donkus, Jack Miller, and Mark Sputnik. They are going to be returning home after a very long extended stay. And we're bringing Phineas Masters, Boris Bogvardzy, and Hernan Cortez to man the station for a little bit. So the entire purpose of this was to train a crew up for a long duration mission. And now that they have been on this for 4 years, well, that probably means that they are going to be more than capable of going to Mars when that transfer windows open up. And that is something that I do want to do. In the next Mars transfer window, after we send the original station parts, that's when we will be sending a crew. That's when we will be sending the fuel tanks, maybe even a Mars type of plane, space plane, that will be a single stage to orbit to get from the surface of Mars back up to the space station. Kind of what I want to do for that. And I think I'll be designing that in a live stream soon. But with that, that is going to be the end of this episode. In the next one, we are going to be sending everything over to Mars and building it up, which should be out same time next week, as always, for the past few weeks. But thank you for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, why not give it a like? If you've really enjoyed it and want to keep up with the content on my channel, please do consider subscribing. I'd like to give a big thanks for the continued support from all of my patrons, and I have been Karnasa, and I will see you later.